Well, here we are, peaceful Fitzroy Park. Unitarian Church just down the road, beautiful fresh growing grass, the mowed variety, people having picnics, having their lunch, and just behind us we have what is called the Eureka Towers, which is Melbourne's tallest building. And you think to yourself, well, what's all this stuff on the building for? Well, it's quite an interesting concept, although it's Melbourne's tallest building, and it's a bit of a money trap. You've got to go upstairs to get views, and there's a very nice restaurant at the top where you pay over $100 each to have dinner and look at the city. It's quite fascinating because it actually acknowledges the Eureka rebels. The gold is the gold rushes of the 1850s in Victoria. The red line which you see at the bottom of the gold and running through the gold is the blood which was shed by the Eureka miners on the 3rd of December 1854, where over 50 miners were killed by the British authorities because they were fighting to defend their rights and liberties. And the whole essence of the Eureka Rebellion is incorporated in the oath which the miners swore on the 29th of November 1854. And it's very simple. We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other and fight to defend our rights and liberties. Now, the thing about the Eureka Rebellion was it was an international rebellion. People of all races, of all religions, of all cultures, of all colours participated in the Eureka Rebellion. Their gripe was against the authorities who used arbitrary exercise of their power to prevent them from exercising what they believed were the inalienable human rights. That means human rights they were born with that nobody could take away. So if you ever come to Melbourne, you can see the Eureka Towers from most part. Just nod. It's although it's a capitalist symbol, it's a symbol about development, overdevelopment. It's a symbol about unbridled growth. But on the building itself is a symbol which recognises the sacrifice of the Eureka miners who shed their blood to ensure that we live in an egalitarian community, although most of that has disappeared over the last 100 years or so, but they shed their blood for that reason. A few days ago something happened in New Zealand which is unimaginable. 50 men, women and children were slaughtered in the most cruelest way, slaughtered while they were worshipping in their place of worship. And they were slaughtered because they weren't bad people who had done horrible things. They were slaughtered because they were Muslims. And they were slaughtered by an Australian. They were slaughtered by a man who's 28, who for the last 20 years has been filled with the hateful rhetoric which has been part and parcel of this country. A hateful rhetoric which stems from the top of the business community, from the top of the corporate world, from the top of the political world, from the Murdoch media and other media networks which have used divisions, differences in race and religion to push their narrow ideological agenda. Now I want to give these people a voice today because they were human beings with families and friends and children and hopes and aspirations and desires who come to New Zealand in the majority of cases to forge a new life for themselves free of the atrocities which they experienced in their part of the world. And I'd like to read out their names because every individual matters. They were slaughtered like pigs in a slaughterhouse. They were slaughtered like sheep in a slaughterhouse. They were slaughtered like beef in a slaughterhouse. But they weren't animals, they were human beings. It's bad enough that we slaughter animals, but to slaughter human beings indiscriminately in this manner for no real reason but ideological is something which we need to address as a community. Let's not forget, this man didn't come from the Middle East. This man was born here. He was raised here. He went to school here. He was educated here. He had friends here. He worked here. He was one of us. And what we need to look at is why this has occurred. Now I'd like to read out the names of the 50 people who were slaughtered to give them some semblance of being. Makud Ibrahim was 3. His brother said of him, he was energetic, playful, and liked to smile and laugh a lot, just like any 3-year-old. Just like any 3-year-old. Atta Ilian was 33. He was actually the goalkeeper for New Zealand's futsal team, and futsal team is an indoor soccer competition. He was the New Zealand goalkeeper. Dahoud Nadi was 71. Syed Mill was 14. This young boy wanted to be a footballer when he grew up. He's the head teacher of Kashmir High School, said Syed was an awesome kid with kind eyes, a big heart and a cheeky smile. Naheem Rashid was 50. Talhala Rashid was 21. He was Naheem's eldest son, so both father and son died in this slaughter. Zihan Raza, the only son of Gulan Hussain and Karam Bibi, died on that day with his parents who had come to visit him. Gulham Hassan and Karam Bibi. Harun Mahmud was 40. Syed Jayan Dad Ali, survived by his wife and 3 children. Syed Arab Hamed. His mild warmth, dedication, respect and humour will be deeply missed. These were his colleagues from the accounting firm he worked for. Sohail Sahid was an engineer who'd moved to New Zealand in 2017 from Pakistan. His wife said he was very kind-hearted, smart and a loving person. His daughters were his life. Fajar Ashan was 30. He'd been in New Zealand for 10 years. He was married with 2 young children, a 3-year-old daughter and a 6-month-old son. Zakara Burian was a construction worker who helped in the reconstruction of Christchurch after the 2011 earthquake. Mozammel Haq was a dental student. Omar Farouk was a welder. His wife is still in Bangladesh and is pregnant. Abdas Samad, 66. He lectured at Christchurch Lincoln University, where he studied for his PhD in the 1980s. Hafiz Musa was critically injured in the blast but died when he reached hospital. He was an Islamic scholar and religious leader. Khaled Mustafa, he was a refugee from Syria. Came all the way from Syria to New Zealand for a peaceful life and slaughtered like an animal indiscriminately. Hamza Mustafa was Khaled's 16-year-old son. He was shot as he prayed beside his father. They could never imagine that coming from Syria to New Zealand this would actually occur to their family. Linda Armstrong was New Zealand born and converted to Islam 10 years ago. She had a childlike innocence and befriended many travellers, immigrants and refugees, opening her home, her heart and her kitchen. Amjad Hamid was a doctor who died. He specialised in cardiorespiratory illnesses and worked for the Canterbury District Hospital Board. He was 57. Matullah Safi was 55. He had been living in New Zealand for about 9 years and he had a wife and 7 children, 6 sons and a daughter. Hussein al-Umari was 35. He died while challenging the gunman with his bare hands. Tariq Omar was a former student. He was a part-time football coach, 24. Likid Abdul Hamid was 58. He'd moved to Christchurch from Jakarta in 2003. He was a maintenance engineer, an aircraft maintenance engineer. Mahibub Kokaha was 65. Ramis Vora and Asif Vora were both shot that day, both father and son. Ansi Alibaba was 24. They'd moved from Kerala in India. She worked in a local supermarket in Christchurch. Junaid Kara Ismail was actually born in New Zealand to loving parents. Mohammed Imran Khan, 38, ran a restaurant in Christchurch. He was married and had a 10-year-old son. Ozir Kadir, 25. He was studying aviation and hoped to be a pilot. Munir Suleiman was an Egyptian engineer who had lived in New Zealand since the mid-1990s. Asraf Morosi, he left behind a wife and 2 children in Egypt. Abdul Qadir Ilmi, 70, father of 4 from Somalia. Muzanu Awali, 77, from Somalia. And the following Jordanian nationals were also killed. Abdul Fattah Qasem Ibrahim Qasem, Ali Mahmoud Abdullah El Madani, and Kamal Mohammed Kamal Dawash. In 1901, the first legislation that went through the Australian Parliament Federation was the White Australia policy. Kanaks who'd been used as slaves in Queensland and northern New South Wales working on the sugarcane fields for decades were deported back to the Pacific Islands, over 20,000 people. During the 1950s and 1960s, we saw our participation in the Vietnam War and the racism that actually created. We saw wave after wave of migrants, first from Europe, then from Asia, having to deal with this deep-set racism which is within our psyche. Look, I'm not here to beat myself. I'm not here to tell you to change your mind. I'm here to explain what's happened, because nothing comes of nothing. We are all part of a continuum. Things happen for a reason, because we allow them to happen. We allowed this man, and we've allowed this ideology, which is based on the concept of totalitarianism, which means having absolute state power to determine how people live, who lives and who dies. This is nothing new. We saw it in Stalinist Russia. We saw it in Nazi Germany, where people with the same ideological bent control the state apparatus and use that state apparatus to impose their will and their vision on society. And in Nazi Germany, we saw people being eliminated because of their race, because of their colour, because of their disability, because of their gender orientation, because of their political beliefs. This is what we saw, and this is what's happening in our country today. We are taking this in as mother's milk. We don't even realise it. You pick up a newspaper, you look at social media, you listen to a radio broadcast, you listen to the so-called commentarian, and you will see that they have built the foundations of what's happened. And we as a society need to not move on, not close our eyes, not forget what's happened, but we as a society need to understand why it's happened, and we need to come out and we need to point out and no longer turn the other cheek, and no longer allow these people, whether it's a Prime Minister, a Cabinet Minister, some deluded racist bigot, they need to be pointed out and they need to be put in their place. Because if we don't do this, what we'll see is a continuation of this hate speech, a continuation of what occurred in New Zealand, and before we know it, unless we as a community pull together at a political level, a social level, a cultural level, and address this, what we will see is more Christchurch in the future, as people believe that they and only they have the right to exist because they are right and everybody else is wrong. And pity us as a community if these people ever gain the levers of state power and use the state apparatus, as happened in fascist Germany, fascist Italy, Stalinist Russia, to crush people they believe are not worthy of existence. Not because of what they've done, not because of who they are, but because of race or gender or sexual orientation and or disability. And this needs to be, we need to keep up this fight year after year after year. Now I implore you not to turn the other cheek. I implore you to confront these people when they need to be confronted. Because if you don't confront them, that filth that we're walking in today on this continent will continue to rise and eventually consume each and every one of us. Thank you for listening. Next week, hopefully, the topic won't be as divisive. Maybe it'll be something simple like, why do we have a blue sky? But I doubt it. And sorry for the noise. We thought we'd come to a park today, have a really quiet session after all these sessions in the city. We get mowers, we get wind blowers, you know, we get school children, which I don't mind, and we've done our best. So if you don't like the noise, listen in next week. We'll see if we can find a bunker somewhere where we can actually do the next session.